The space madness is taking over star systems, and it looks like it's happening in a straight line, putting the Federation colony world of Deneva in the crosshairs. The Enterprise races to find a solution, but even when the cause is found, the search for the cure seems to be hopeless. But our boys better figure it out fast, because the lives of every Denevan and even our buddy Spock hang in the balance as we execute Operation Annihilate. Hit it!
Hey!
With 2 dashes and an exclamation point, this is the Star Trek episode with the most punctuation in it. Weird record, but worth pointing out, I think. 2 guest stars this week, though they don't really play much of a role. Playing Kirk's sister-in-law, Aurelin Kirk, is Joan Swift. A go-to actor in Lucille Ball's roster of regulars, Joan also appeared in a lot of genre stuff like Alfred Hitchcock Hour, The Andromeda Strain, and Slaughterhouse-Five. She also did a good bit of comedy with appearances on shows like Bewitched and The Munsters. Playing Kirk's nephew Peter is Craig Hundley, later known as Craig Huxley. All of his acting roles were when he was 25 or younger, including another appearance on Star Trek, but this guy's major contributions, not only to Hollywood in general, but to Star Trek in particular, has been as a musician and a composer. You know that iconic sound from Star Trek the Motion Picture? That's an instrument called the blaster beam, and it was invented by our boy Craig here. He's used that thing in everything from Star Trek to Michael Jackson's Beat It to 10 Cloverfield Lane and The Orville. Plus, his work in electronic music can be heard in over 100 other movies and TV shows. Talented guy. But enough about that. Let's get into the plot. So we begin our adventure on the Enterprise as they're heading to a planet called Deneva. Uhura can't get the Denevan authorities on the phone, but Kirk gives her a private number to call. Apparently, he knows a guy. Kirk wanders over to the science station and asks Spock, "Hey, what's new with you?" Spock says that he's figured out that the whole plague of space madness that's been destroying entire civilizations appears to be happening in a straight line. Well, that escalated quickly. Over the last few hundred years, this space madness has hit 4 star systems, and if the pattern continues, Deneva is next. Sulu breaks in and says there's a ship on their sensors, and it's heading straight for the Denevan sun. They try to intercept the thing and get it on the horn, but nothing doing. It ain't out of control, it's flying into the sun on purpose. They finally get some transmissions from the thing as it gets close to the sun, and the pilot says he's finally free. Then his free ass gets roasted like a marshmallow. McCoy says that space madness must have reached Deneva already. Oh, and don't your brother live on Deneva, Jim? He don't answer, but spoiler alert, yeah, he does. After the opening credits, Uhura says she's gotten through on that private number, and she puts it on the speaker. A lady is in the middle of saying, "Hurry up and come help us," and she don't got a lot of time because, quote, they'll know. Kirk calls her Aurelin and tells her to repeat the message, but she apparently hangs up. Uhura tries to get her back, but there's no answer. A time pass is cut, and the Enterprise is now in orbit around Deneva. Kirk is in the transporter room with a team consisting of Dr. McCoy, Scotty, Yeoman Zara, and, no kidding, Bobby. That's this guy's actual name, Bobby. Kirk's giving them a pep talk and says they're beaming into the capital city of Deneva. Spock shows up a little late, but says that the sensors still show roughly the same number of people as expected are alive down on the planet, but they're not doing nothing. Everybody's indoors and hiding or something. The team beams down to Redondo Beach, but it appears to be deserted. Lots of modern art, though, very avant-garde. Spock confirms with the tricorder that the people are all there, they're just hanging out in the buildings. Kirk spots his brother's place, and they head that way. Suddenly, 4 angry Denevans in Pagia mining jumpsuits show up. Kirk and team stand there and stare at them as they run the entire quarter of a mile from where they showed up. They seem pissed, and they have sticks. Goes with the jumpsuits, I guess. And, as is the tradition with angry mobs with sticks, they rush the team and stop about 10 feet away and just yell stuff about the team being in danger. From them, presumably, because after the yelling, they charge the rest of the way and Kirk and team stun them with their phasers. McCoy scans them and finds that even unconscious, their nervous systems are turned up to 11. Weird. Suddenly, they hear a scream and they run into the building where it's coming from. They find a woman trying to cover a vent with a cookie sheet talking about they're here. Kirk and the gang bust in, and as the camera pulls out, we see that there are 2 other people on the floor, a guy and a kid, and the lady is still screaming about keep them away. Nobody seems to be listening to her, though, because they leave the vent wide-ass open. McCoy hits her with a tranquilizer that he apparently has on speed dial just for such an occasion, and Kirk helps her into, not gonna lie, a pretty kick-ass looking chair. Kirk talks to her, and we find out this is a Reeland. He reassures her that she's safe, and McCoy cuts in and asks if this dead guy over here is Kirk's brother. Kirk rolls the guy over, and wow, he's the spitting image of Kirk, just with like a different rug and a mustache. But it's uncanny. McCoy says his nephew Peter is out cold, but alive. McCoy calls the ship to beam him, Reeland, and Peter up to sickbay. Kirk asks Spock what he thinks his sister-in-law was talking about with the whole they thing. Spock says he don't know. The census didn't pick up anything dangerous or weird on the planet. And before he beams up, McCoy says he'd like Kirk to be there when the lady and the kid wake up. Kirk leaves Spock in charge and heads up. Taking his let her down easy cue from Spock last episode, as Reeland is waking up, Kirk hits her with Sam is dead. Then he asks what gives with the craziness. She said that things came, stowed away on a ship from a planet called Ingram B, and that the things made those people take their ship to Deneva. But no matter how many times Kirk asks what the things are, she don't give an answer. McCoy ends up having to trank her again and mentions that it's like something is causing her pain, so she can't answer. When she calms down after the trank, she says they're making the Denevans build ships for them, that they need humans to be their arms and legs. She tells Kirk not to let them go any further, and then she up and dies. After weirdly making sure McCoy knows not to kill his nephew, Kirk beams back down to the planet where the rest of the landing party is waiting on him. Kirk asks if they've seen anything weird down there, and they said no, but they did hear a weird buzzing sound, and they was about to go check it out. They go to the mall where the buzzing sound is, and as they're looking around, we hear that buzzing, and a weird sort of squeaky sound that sounds like my uncle on the couch after Thanksgiving dinner. Yeah, that's the one. They don't see nothing at first, but they soon spot the creatures. They look like that novelty plastic vomit you used to get at joke shops. When there was joke shops. Just a kind of splat-looking thing, and they're on the walls and the ceilings. And when the crew get close, they start flying around, and the crew's got to duck or get a splat monster in the face. They open fire with their phasers, and it takes a while, but one of them eventually hits the ground. Spock tries to scan it, but it don't even move the needle. It's like it ain't even there. Spock says, say it with me now, it's life, Jim, but not as we know it. Spock says they should take this knocked out one up to the ship, but Kirk ain't happy with how close everything is and is worried about a trap, so they pull out. But as they do so, the knocked out splat monster wakes up and flies right into Spock's back, latching on. This is clearly painful as hell. As he's rolling around in pain, Kirk manages to get the thing off of him, but he's still hurting bad. After a commercial break, they've got Spock in sickbay and McCoy is working on his back, where the splat monster left a hole. After he gets done, he goes up to the bridge with a jar of stuff he got out of Spock and Kirk's dead sister-in-law. Says stuff like that is all through their bodies, and there ain't no way he could get in there and remove it all. Appears to be the way the creatures are controlling people, and he has no idea what to do about it. Well, back in sickbay, Spock wakes up, still hurting like a mofo, but he's trying to control it. No dice, though, because he shows up on the bridge and tries to take over the ship. They try to stop him, but he's throwing people around left and right and just being a general asshole. Chapel shows up with a hypo, and McCoy uses it to knock his ass out. They put him back in bed, and they tie him down this time. McCoy shows with the display panel that the level of pain he's experiencing is just north of having a white-hot Limp Bizkit CD shoved right up your Limp Bizkit music appreciation hole, so to speak. Spock wakes up, though, and assures them that he's got a handle on things now and he don't need no sedatives or restraints. His mind's got its feet under it now, and he's cool to return to duty. Kirk says, yeah, let's give it a little bit and see how it goes. Kirk and McCoy leave sickbay, and to prove he's totally safe and fine now, Spock decides to break out of his restraints. In the transporter room, Scotty is teaching Lieutenant Leslie how to work on the transporter without having your back completely to the door so people can't sneak up on you, and right on time to demonstrate the usefulness of this technique, Spock walks in and they instantly notice him. Scotty says, "See, if you'd have been crewman Kyle, you'd be sporting your 5th TBI by now." Spock says he wants Scotty to beam him back down to the same spot as before, but Scotty says, "Can't do it, Sally. The captain says nobody but nobody goes down there." But Spock, once again demonstrating that he's totally in control of himself, knocks Scotty down and nerve pinches Leslie. Scotty comes up heavy, though, and says he's going to light Spock up like a Christmas tree if he don't stand down. He calls up the captain, and when Kirk and McCoy get there with some security guys, Spock explains that they need a specimen from the planet, and since he's already been splatted, he's the guy for the job. Kirk reluctantly agrees, and Spock hits the transporter pad with Scotty's phaser and his lunchbox. As Spock is heading back to the mall to pick up a splat monster, a dude in an orange suit with something what looks like a giant tool for a Lego guy is hiding behind a pillar. I guess he figured eventually somebody was going to beam down and he was going to be ready. He jumps Spock, but he don't make his move until after the commercial break. But Spock ducks the Lego tool and gives him the nerve pinch. Apparently the show is running a little short. He makes it back to the mall, zots a splat monster, and uses some rather large tongs to put it in his lunchbox. Jump cut to the ship's laboratory where Spock's been studying the splat monster. He says it's a single-celled creature and it's built like a brain cell, and that all the splat monsters together are actually one big creature, which is why the census didn't register the things. Spock points out that they may be so different they won't be able to do nothing about them. But Kirk reminds everybody that the Deneva guy who roasted himself in the cold open said he was free when he got close enough to the sun, so they should probably start there. An hour later, and McCoy says he's hit the thing with radiation and intense heat, but nothing seems to put a dent in the friggin' thing. Kirk says, well, if we can't find something, we're gonna have to Death Star this puppy. Can't do that, so solve the thing. Later in Kirk's quarters, Spock and McCoy come in and say they're stumped. Can't figure out the solution. Kirk says, well, something about the sun fixed Roasty McCharcoal back there before he got flambéed. You're the smartest scientist and doctor in the fleet, so this should be a cakewalk. What gives? They're like, we tried heat and radiation. That's literally the only things the sun produces. There's nothing else. No other things about the sun are even slightly a thing. Kirk plays with a light switch and goes, hold up. What about light? Literally, that's what he does that gives him the idea. Spock and McCoy are like, are you a friggin' wizard? How did you come up with that? They put the splat monster in a room with a bright-ass light and the chair from the neural neutralizer. Goggles on and fried splat monster. Now, Kirk says, we gotta put a dude what's got splat monster crud in him in the room and give him a tan. Gotta know if it'll work, like right now. Spock says, I'll do it. Let's do it right now. I'm good to go. Why wait? This sucks. Let's roll. McCoy is like, that's a lot of light. Kirk says, nope, there's no other way. Let's do it right now. McCoy says, you've convinced me. It's the only thing we can do. So Spock jumps in the chair. McCoy puts the tanning bed on high, and presto. Spock ain't got no splat monster crap in him no more. And he's also blind. Completely and irrevocably blind. Permanent blindness. Never see again. Tragic, really. Can't even use the little eyeball viewer at the science station no more. He loved that thing. Literally 5 seconds later, Chapel comes in with the results of the test on the dead splat monster. McCoy reads them, and of all the dumb luck, it turns out you only need to hit people with a spectrum of light that humans and Vulcans can't even see to cure them of the splat. Spock didn't need to be blinded at all. Well, crap. Cut to the Enterprise laying out the satellites needed to zap the splat monsters down on the planet. They turn them on and the splat monsters melt like cotton candy in the shower. Uhura gets a call from the surface saying the plan is working perfectly. Kirk calls down to sickbay and tells McCoy to tell Spock that the plan worked. He also tells him that it wasn't his fault. It don't cheer him up none. In the epilogue, as Kirk is preparing his report to Starfleet, who should show up just looking at stuff like a champ but the no longer blind Spock? Saints be friggin' praised! Turns out Vulcans have something called utter horseshit, or an inner eyelid, that made it so that the blindness was only temporary. Something about the Vulcan sun being so bright they evolved it, but they totally forgot about it like humans did their appendix. Kirk is like, did getting your sight back give you any emotions, huh? Oh, never mind. Lay in a course for season 2 and hit it. We roll credits. Great stuff. None. Well, there are a couple of decent lines in here.
I'm a Vulcan, Doctor. Pain is a thing of the mind. The mind can be controlled.
You're only half Vulcan. What about the human half of you?
It is proving to be an inconvenience, but it is manageable.
A good look inside the struggle Spock is dealing with when he's trying to overcome the pain that the splat monsters are putting on him. I wish we'd have explored that a little further. Maybe showing him almost lose it at some point and having to wrestle to get it back under control, something like that. Instead, we get this, and then it's pretty much not a thing for the rest of the episode.
Please don't tell Spock that I said he was the best first officer in the fleet.
Why, thank you, Dr. McCoy.
You've been so concerned about his Vulcan eyes, Doctor, you forgot about his Vulcan ears.
After the wasn't getting your sight back emotional miscue just before this joke lands much better and shows that through it all, McCoy has always respected and even admired Spock. It's a lovely little moment. But that's it. The friggin' Goof. I literally don't know where to begin here. Like I said in Court Martial, I'm sorry if this is one of your favorites, but this thing is god-awful. Thing is, it starts out pretty promising. Space madness is sweeping through star systems in a more or less straight line. A crazy guy gets close to the sun and that cures him, but he burns up. It's a mystery. You could do a lot with that setup. And particularly at the time, the idea of a creature being made up of a seemingly independent swarm of cellular components is a pretty neat and novel idea. And yet what we got was crap. So what happened? Well, the performances were pretty good. Not the best of the series, but certainly not the worst. The splat monsters are a little silly, not Hua Chang's best work, and when they fly around, there's pretty much no attempt to hide the fact that they're hanging from strings, sure, but they aren't really on the screen much. The sets look good. We got a new lab for McCoy that looks great. The TRW Space and Defense Park in Redondo Beach was a great choice of location for a futuristic city on a colony-type world, so it wasn't none of that stuff. You remember that abysmal rewrite of City on the Edge of Forever, the horribleness of which single-handedly persuaded Harlan Ellison to come back and do 2 rewrites for free? Remember who wrote that one? If you don't remember the guy's name, let me refresh your memory by showing you the writing credit from this episode. That's the guy. You kind of see it now, don't you? I don't want to beat up on the guy. As of this recording, he only passed away about a month and a half ago, seriously. But holy balls, this is terrible. Let's start with the biggie. You're telling me that it never occurred to Leonard H. McCoy and Spock S. Spock, 2 of the finest minds in all of the Federation, that other than heat and radiation, the sun also emits friggin' light? When Kirk asks what are the qualities of the sun, Spock's answer starts out really scientific, and it's actually kind of impressive.
What other qualities or properties does the sun have?
It exists physically. It occupies space. It has mass, therefore gravity. It converts matter to energy.
To a lot of people, that would seem silly to point out, but it's a very scientific answer. You can't just discount stuff just because it's obvious. That's bringing judgment into things, and we're talking about facts about the sun here. But he goes through this whole list and doesn't mention light. It takes Kirk playing with the future machine to figure that out. And honestly, that really feels like Shatner had a talk with the writing staff and suggested that Kirk be shown to be the real smarty pants of the 3 of them. This ain't the first time something has stumped Spock and McCoy and Kirk figures it out, but it's never been as egregious as this before. But now they know the key is light. And what do? They cram Spock in the tanning bed as quickly as possible, blast him with 1 million candle power, apparently fry out his optic nerve, and mere seconds after he comes out ostensibly blinded for life, Chapel comes in with the results of the test on the fried splat monster, saying blinding people ain't necessary. So there was a test running on the effects of the tanning bed on the splat monster, but McCoy decided to go ahead and blast Spock's eyes out of his head before seeing the results? What, he didn't know they were running that test? No way. Maybe he didn't know they'd have the results that fast, but he didn't think to call down there and see when they'd have the results? Are you friggin' kidding me? You want to hurry up because Spock is hurting? He's been hurting for most of the episode. Sedate his ass and wait on the test. Later, Kirk says, Bones, it wasn't your fault. But that's total horse shit. It absolutely is his fault. McCoy's performance as a doctor during this whole thing makes Jack Elam's character in Cannonball Run look like friggin' Robert Jarvik over here. But okay, Spock's blind now. A sudden, tragic, and irreversible handicap that will force him to redefine his relationships with the people around him and with his life and his career. And he bops onto the bridge in the next scene and is all, oh yeah, I forgot that Vulcans have magic eyeballs that don't get blinded. Silly me, how could I have forgotten that? It ain't like I'm a super genius knows all the things kind of guy. Why would I remember something about my own friggin' body that applied to this exact situation? He says it's like us forgetting our appendix, but our appendix don't have much of a use. This is the thing that evolved for this exact purpose. Now, I get that we don't do the whole things that happen in this episode last into the next one thing. Kirk just lost the love of his life last episode, and not a mention of her, not just in this episode, but ever again. But they don't let this one go a full 5 minutes before they yank it back. And the nature of the cure for the splat crud seems to have been engineered from the beginning with Roasty McRoastface so that this exact thing would happen. But when it's time to pay it off, we get one scene with blind Spock, a couple of sad lines between McCoy and Kirk, and then that's it. Spock's back to seeing crap and none of that mattered. Stellar job, Steve. Speaking of stuff that don't last very long, Kirk lost his friggin' brother, like yesterday, and at the end of the episode, he's teasing Spock about emotional responses to getting his sight back and recording reports to Starfleet, rather happily reporting that everything's cool. Why did we even bring his brother into this if we weren't going to have losing the guy affect the captain beyond the first act? There's an opportunity there for some more development of Kirk's character, and we just kind of wave at it as it passes by. Yeah, he dealt with devastating loss in the last episode too, so it might be a little much for that to happen 2 episodes in a row, but if that's the concern, what the hell did you put his brother in the thing in the first place for? And if you've watched the episode, are people just kind of weirdly combative with each other for like no reason in this thing?
Contact broken, sir.
Reestablish.
I'm sorry, sir.
I'm not interested in your excuses, Lieutenant. Reestablish contact with that transmitter.
I'm afraid that's impossible at the moment, Captain.
Let's prepare to close. Nurse!
Doctor, that's not all you're going to do.
Miss Chapel!
Doctor, there is more of it in him entwined all through his body.
Miss Chapel, if you cannot assist me as required, call another nurse in here. But do one or the other now.
Jim, that man is sick. And don't give me any damnable logic about him being the only man for the job.
I don't have to, Bones. We both know he is.
These weird confrontations happen, and then everybody continues like nothing happened. They aren't referenced or referred to at all. No, sorry about that, I'm a little tense, everything's fine. There's a weird blow-up out of nowhere, and then we move on. Even the guy who jumps Spock when he's going to get the splat monster comes out of nowhere and ends up serving no purpose whatsoever. What the hell is going on in this thing? There's other dumb stuff too, like the spectrum of light that you need to wipe these things out turns out to be ultraviolet, which ain't much better than visible light when it comes to frying humans. In fact, it's considerably worse. And not to mention, we established in What a Little Girl's Made Of that Sam Kirk has 3 kids. So where's his other 2 kids in this one? But that's probably enough. Don't want this to become a full-blown hate fest. Possums ain't known for hypertension, but I'm not looking to blaze any trails over here. But if you've got some other stuff that I didn't touch on, let me know about it in the comments down there. Help me shoulder this burden, possum friends. But with all of this crap, You know what that means.
Aha!
Ruminations. Well, there ain't no message in this thing, so we'll skip past that part. But as it turns out, there might be a reason that this script is as bad as it is. Stephen Karabatsos was let go as story editor in December of 1966, so that Dorothy Fontana could take his place. But there was a snag. His contract stated that he would deliver one script that was entirely his own before the end of the contract. He'd done a lot of rewriting, especially on Miri and Court Martial, and in all of that time didn't really have a lot of time to write one of his own. He didn't even come up with this idea himself. This was one of those story ideas that was floating around waiting for somebody to do something with it. Heck, in 1951, Robert Heinlein wrote a book called The Puppet Masters that this borrowed very heavily from. And there's reused concepts from other Star Treks in this thing too. Victims inflicted with pain to keep them quiet is something we saw in Dagger of the Mind. A sort of hive mind of all the creatures and the infected was a big part of Jerry Soul's The Way of the Spores, which got cut when it became This Side of Paradise. So this is kind of a hodgepodge of stuff from all kinds of different sources. And get this, in the original draft of the script, Karabatsos had the episode ending with Kirk actually wiping out Deneva. Full-blown President Clark scorched earth protocol. They're already testing NBC's Standards and Practices Department, opening this thing with a suicide, but ending it with a friggin' genocide was probably going to be one side too many. We've already established that only doing half of that is enough for you to have The Executioner tacked onto the end of your name, so probably not a great look for the hero of our show to make Kodos look like a slacker, you know? Now, back in the 60s, season finales weren't the big event that they are today, or even at the time of The Next Generation. Season 1 of TNG ended with not so much a cliffhanger, but still a pretty big reveal with the return of the Romulans. For old school fans, it was pretty big right before the season break. But other than soap operas, that really wasn't something they did with TV shows back in the day. Even so, though, with arguably the best episode of Star Trek happening last week, to end Season 1 with this is deep into not with a bang but a whimper territory. Now, it wasn't originally supposed to be the last episode, but Amok Time, Friday's Child, and an episode called Tomorrow the Universe, which would kind of sort of become Patterns of Force, but not exactly. We'll talk more about that when we get to it. But these weren't going to be ready before they were going to need to go dark for the rest of the season, so NBC's order of 32 episodes got cut down to 29 at the request of the studio, so we end the first season of Star Trek with this friggin' treasure right here. So there you have it. Operation Annihilate. I gotta know what you guys thought of this episode in the comments down there. And hey, Season 1 of Star Trek is in the can. How about that? Who'd have thought, huh? Now be on the lookout for an announcement about what's happening with the channel from here. Don't worry, Star Trek reviews are gonna keep coming, but there's some stuff we gotta talk about in the meantime. No big deal. And if you're in the future watching this in like 2047 or something, don't worry about it. It don't matter no how. If you've been enjoying the Star Trek reviews, please kick that like button in the ass, and if you ain't done so already, please consider smacking the subscribe button as well. Head over to adstudiosmerch.com for all your Possum-related fashion and accessory needs. It's a great way to support the channel, and you look like a friggin' rock star doing it. There's also the thanks button down there if you just want to throw a couple of quatloos in the tip jar. Thank you so much for being a Possum friend through the whole of Season 1. If you've been here from the beginning, thank you enormously for sticking with your possum here. And if you're relatively new to the channel, thank you so much for joining up. Hope you stick around yourself. Gonna try to make that a decision you don't regret. Next time, we kick off Season 2 with a Halloween episode. Oof, this should be fun. Join us next time for Cat's Paw. Until then, Possum friends are awesome friends. Take it easy, all right? Later.